Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Welcome back to Radix Live, and welcome back, Ed. How are you?
Hello, yes, I'm very good. I had a lovely Nepalese meal last night. The Brits in Oulu Society met up, and we had a Nepalese. It's a society for British people and related colonials
Ah,
in Oulu, and we had a lovely Nepalese meal, and then went to the pub. So
what
that
does
was
that
good.
involve?
Well, Nepalese food. It's
Yes.
very similar to Indian food. It's just better.
So it's very similar to what we saw in the documentary known as Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
It's I
That is
No,
eating
I think
monkey
that that's
brains.
very high status food. I don't. They didn't offer monkey brain or anything like that. No, no. It was more in the realm of things called with names like mixed Shiraz and
Hmm.
so on. But it's very nice food. I heartily recommend it. So we did that.
Okay. Go ahead.
And then otherwise no, just the same same old sort of routine.
Things, just doing some kid stuff this weekend. I'm going to have to navigate a tricky situation where my kids want a giant pet snake and a herd of guinea pigs.
Well, the guinea pigs, I can agree. I mean, the guinea pigs have a certain degree of empathy. They're pack animals, and I can see
Definitely.
there would be an attraction. But the snakes are just, they're not very intelligent and they're unpleasant. So I can't see any good argument for getting a pet snake. As
It's
you know,
cool and interesting.
I did once in Tennessee meet the pastor of a snake handling church, and
Hmm.
he was very enthusiastic. He wanted to make snake handling as big as the Catholic Church, which, of course, in order to do that, you'd have to farm rattlesnakes and copperheads. But
Yeah.
he was very much up for that. But that's no, I'm
So,
not a
what
fan.
is the idea behind snake handling? Oh,
Oh,
okay.
there's a specific passage in the Bible which says that if you are a true believer, then you will be able to drink poison and handle deadly serpents, and you will be absolutely fine. And so it's a way of
Seems
signaling your
highly symbolic.
religious commitment to drink strychnine and handle deadly serpents and survive it. But they have wonderful cognitive dissonance about it. So if you do get bitten, then that doesn't mean that you're not holy. That means that it's God's will, or it wasn't you did something unholy. It was your time. If you die, for example, that doesn't mean that you're not a good Christian. That just means that was just your time anyway. It was a coincidence. And it
Of
happened to be
course.
that the snakes killed you. But the guy that I met he was 22-year-old father of five, Andrew Hamblin, and he'd lost the use of one finger because when he was handling the snake on that day, he hadn't prayed enough and he wasn't quite sure the Holy Spirit
A
wanted it.
snake bit off his finger.
So it bit his finger, poisoned his finger. He's lost the
Oh, he's
use of the
poisoned
finger.
his finger.
Lost the
Okay.
use of the finger, and then also the other occasion it bit him on the back of the head, but the poison didn't go in.
To
So
his
so
brain.
he to his yeah.
Maybe
So
it did.
he was all right. But his best friend, I was like when I went there in 2013, we had wanted to go to a place in Jolo, West Virginia,
Uh huh.
but we couldn't because the pastor had been bitten to death by snakes. So
Wow.
we had to go to this place in Lafayette, Tennessee, uh, instead. Hmm.
That's quite a interesting anthropological study you did.
Hmm.
It's fascinating.
They were very interesting people, the snake handlers of Lafayette, Tennessee.
Sure,
Uh,
sure.
I wish them well if they're watching.
So I want to talk about two things first. So first off, and I'll share my screen here, is that Spiteful Mutants is now, which is your latest masterpiece, is now available on Amazon. So you can buy it, you can pre-order. It's going to be released on June 6th. And so we already have some purchases. I think we're somewhere around there in the ranks. I mean, there have been some purchases, so we're in the top 100 of evolutionary psychology or something. But we'll get higher. We'll be in the top 10 once it goes out. But
Yeah,
yes,
we need to repeat the success of Islam, which was number one in Islam, and
right.
making sense of race, which was number one in I think evolutionary, in possibly biological science. So
Yes, we will.
we need to repeat that
Because
in
I
the
think this book is even better in a way. I mean, I think Making Sense of Race is essential, and it's a long-term bestseller type book. But This one I think is better. It's it's kind of more interesting and punchy in the sense that you talk about current events like QAnon, SJWs, transsexuality, incels. I mean, the whole gamut of kind of weird, marginal, though mainstream, highly mainstream in a way, um, social phenomena of the internet and the real world. So it's punchy in that way, and then it also does have all the theoretical rigor of making sense of race and similar books like that. So,
Yes, so
I think it's great.
order it, folks. Order it, folks, and it'll get there. It'll get to you in time for your summer holiday, and it will be
Yes, it will.
excellent beach reading. Or
I agree.
Whatever equivalent of going to the beach Americans do.
We go to the beach
hunting, and do you? Because most of you are going to be quite far from beaches, aren't you? It's quite a big country, so a lot of you won't be very near beaches.
Well, we have lakes. There's a beach out here.
Oh, that's true. Yes, that's true. Yeah. It was that lake I went to in Michigan. Was it called Lake Michigan? And it was so sea-like that I forgot I wasn't by the sea.
It's weird, actually. Yeah, but then it's fresh water. Yeah, so it's a weird situation. I sometimes feel like that as well. You kind of forget where you are. You think, because you even have waves in Lake Michigan.
You think you're by the coast, but you're not. You're nowhere near the coast. So yeah, it was a strange place. Oh, what a beautiful seaside town New Buffalo is.
It's giant. Yeah, New Buffalo
town.
It is. It's a giant lake. You could fit the British Isles in the Great Lakes or some craziness like that. And you can see Chicago way off in the distance. It's pretty interesting. Way off. There's like a little hint of a skyline. Okay. I will also, I'm going to share something else on the screen before we get started. So I am very happy to say that, and you probably have heard about this if you're kind of vaguely paying attention to what we're up to, but so I'm starting this new project, and I'm not the only one trying to do alternative university courses effectively. This is kind of a thing, and I think results from the fact that the university is manifestly failing in many ways, and but is beyond, even if it weren't failing, it's extremely expensive and is also kind of time consuming and thus you miss out on lifelong learning. But so this is obviously a trend. It's an interesting trend of doing alternative education. Now, we're starting out in a very realistic, down-to-earth manner. So the courses are highly affordable. I mean, you only need to take out a loan of, under $200,000. So, it's not a big deal, basically. No, just kidding. It's $200. So, we're not going to put you into the bankruptcy courts through our university. Although, I don't know, maybe if you become a super fan, that's a possibility. But so it's Alexandria University, obviously the ancient world is kind of evocation there. So my course is totally sold out. So I wasn't even sure we would have a demand, but Ed's isn't. So please help out poor Ed.
What the hell's happening here? It's seminars, not lectures.
It's a bit kind of like Schopenhauer and Hegel going on here. I don't know if
Schopenhauer and Nietzsche and Hegel that you want to know about, apparently, but you don't want to know about fascinating stuff.
Well, like no, what I mean is that so Schopenhauer was contemporaneous with Hegel, and he was always extremely pissed off when he would offer a course and like one person would sign up, and then Hegel, it was like sold out like months in advance.
Yeah, even though Hegel is bollocks and Schopenhauer is good. So Schopenhauer is actually interesting. So one can't account for taste. But yes, my course is on the religion. I think it's very salient at the moment because we all know that what we have is a reformation now, a new religion with wokeness and whatever. And so it will trace the path. Well, the title I gave you was The Psychology of Religion from Totemism to Wokeness, wasn't it? But anyway,
that's just a little.
It will trace the path from the beginnings of religion, how it evolves, how it comes into existence, to religion in the current day from an evolutionary perspective. And so it'll be done as a seminar system. So it'll be books, you read books, and we discuss them, and whatever. So I think it would be quite fun. So you should sign up to that.
Definitely sign up. And I think we have some different ones. So the Nietzsche course, I might put a waiting list on there, but I do want to, the reason why it's sold out is that I want to cap it at 20 people, because for a couple of reasons. These courses are, of course, taking part via Zoom. It's a virtual university. At this point, who knows what will happen 10 years from now, but it's a virtual university at this point. And I feel like once we get too much higher than 20, it's very difficult to manage. People are talking over one another and so on. It also is somewhat demanding. I'm going to ask for some response paper that is little 500 words interpretations of certain text. So Ed and I probably will have a different style. I will do a close reading style. That is, we're going to dive into the text, talk about what he's saying, interpret multiple levels of the text. I think Ed will do more of a seminar kind of lecture style, but both of them will involve writing some papers, which we'll edit, we'll evaluate rather, and then also there'll be a paper at the end. And but yeah, I think it will be somewhat demanding. We're not. This is not, obviously you can do this part-time, needless to say, but it will be demanding, and you will have our attention certainly for these courses that take place on weekends over 2 hours. You'll be able to upload material. We have a kind of member section of the website, so everything will work well. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's very serious because you can get obviously a ton of information online on YouTube and Google Books and Project Gutenberg, et cetera. But I mean, I think what the world is missing is that interaction and evaluation and discussion. So we are offering that.
The kind of university that your grandfather would have gone to.
It really is
what I was trying to offer.
Yeah, it really is. I guess I could make a joke about that. Sans the child abuse. It's just like an English university.
You wouldn't get that at English university. You might get it at English public school.
That's kind of.
Okay. Sans the fact that all the students have been abused. I suppose you put it like that.
Right. The other thing is, Mark and I are also doing a course. We had this up there, and we've just finished the syllabus. So on a Saturday, we're going to basically, it's a 5-week course. Symbolic logic of Hollywood cinema, and we will do a reading of a movie, and then again it will run the same way. It will be a little bit different than reading a text, of course, but similar. We will have cut out parts of the movie that we'll look at very closely, get a lot of interaction. You'll offer your interpretation, and I think you'll get an idea of REM theory. So we have we're going to do this as an ongoing project. So we'll have, we can do this course over and over again and do new films, because it is, obviously a fertile ground. So we're going to do Sunset Boulevard, one of my favorite films, Rosemary's Baby, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Midsommar, and then we'll have class choice. So by about midway through the class, we'll ask you guys to choose, and we will evaluate that film. And again, this is coming from REM theory or Apolloism or so on. So you'll definitely be steeped in how we're thinking about culture in general and religion from that way. So there's a lot of religion going on in our university. There's a evolution of religion, Nietzsche, the Antichrist, and then a kind of almost theological take on film. So interesting. 3 atheists teaching religion. Makes sense. Okay, so let's jump into it. if you want to ask a super chat, you can. We already have a few super chats here, but you can do that via Odyssey. So please don't do that via Entropy. We've kind of moved away from Entropy. Oh, whoops, wrong banner. This is where you go on Odyssey, and that you'll find the channel there on Odyssey, and then you can find the current one. So I think we had a relevant super chat. Okay. Oh, yes. Richard, how similar is SpencerU to PragerU? First off, it's not SpencerU. This is Yehuda Finkelstein for $5. It's not SpencerU, but yeah, okay, sure, you can call it that. I don't think it will be terribly similar to PragerU. PragerU does not offer courses, at least to my knowledge, or interaction. PragerU is they offer 5-minute videos that it's interesting. I mean, it's something that might be done in the future, but they can be good. They can be really ridiculous, but they are basically giving talking points for the conservative movement. And they'll usually have a notable figure of some kind who will narrate them. I'm not terribly interested in that. I think we might be interested in video content in the future, but we're much more interested in interaction and actual teaching and discussion, and than we are in giving anyone talking points, which is all PragerU does. So SpencerU is much better than PragerU. Let me see. I think there was another one, but I'll get to that later. So again, send in your super chats if you so desire. We will answer them on air. Okay. Monkeypox. So this is a thing. Now, do you think we're just hysterical about monkeypox? Because there are only 40 or so cases of this, but it is remarkable that there is a single case at all. So there's a case in Boston the other day. So it's reached America, and there are actually many more cases in Europe. It seems to have. This is a Central and West African virus that creates a really terrible skin disease. However, most people recover, 99 out of 100 or so, and it has a much lower contagion rate than coronavirus.
It's very uncontagious. It's very uncontagious, which is why it's quite worrying, and it sort of perhaps even says something quite important that we've got these cases. So we've got now 20 at the moment. There's the last time I checked, there's 34 cases in Portugal. There's 50 cases in Spain. There's 20 cases in the UK, 22 in Canada. And a lot of the cases that are in, some of the cases anyway, that are in Europe seem to have come from Canada. They've been to Canada. So something's happened in Canada. And 143, 2 in Australia, and 143 in total. And it's an interesting testimony, I guess, to what's going on. That we've been locked down for 2 years, so people haven't been going to Africa and stuff and bringing things about. So if there was going to be an outbreak of any kind of disease that hadn't been around for a while, then it's going to happen now because we've been in lockdown. Secondly, it's possibly that our immune systems have to some extent atrophied because of lockdown. We're not being exposed to illnesses all the time in a way that we were before lockdown. That's the problem. I mean, I've noticed, for example, I used to get a really bad cold every year without fail. And now I haven't for years. I'm sure it's because of COVID and the changes in behavior. But also, of course, you and I were the last generation that was immunized against smallpox.
Right.
So smallpox was
because smallpox was eradicated. Yeah.
Smallpox was eradicated. Smallpox was declared dead in about 1982 or something like that. Yeah. And they stopped immunizing people against smallpox, and monkeypox is closely related to smallpox. It's a kind of much less virulent version of smallpox, and so eventually it almost was inevitable that eventually monkeypox would fill the place that was left by smallpox.
Interesting.
Except that you have all of these people now that are in their 30s and younger who are not immunized against smallpox, and
Don't worry about it. You can you can still talk.
The professionalness of the leader of the alt-right is one could imagine.
Alex, I'm on. I need to.
One,
Okay.
one could
Okay.
imagine, the
Well,
Fuhrer and
I'll handle it later. Okay.
Uncle Adolf. Can you play with me? But
You can get to, yes. It's gosh, the children's quest for fairness. Like if someone gets like an ounce of popsicle more than the other, it's like an outrage, and they need to like appeal.
oh yeah,
to a higher
absolutely.
court.
I have the same with my own children. It's not just that it has to be the same amount of money spent, but it has to be
Right.
the same size and the same
Yes.
sort of intrinsic quality.
I think there is a deep survival instinct of kind of like, whoa, she's getting more. She's getting more. But it's
She's getting
funny.
exactly, yes. It's not good. I remember when they were younger, it was amount. She's got two things. I've got one thing. Yes, but you've got an expensive thing. No,
Right.
no, she's got two things, and I've got one thing.
Right.
And
Because
they
money is
gradually-
abstract. Like in a way, that's a kind of abstract valuation of something. I think they probably understand that less than like the number.
Yeah,
when
but
they're
now
young.
they've got
Yeah.
older and they understand the supposedly intrinsic value of items, but then there's
Right.
size. Anyway, look, so what this means is that you've got two things I think are relevant. One is that you've got a people with an increasingly compromised immune system for genetic reasons and poor health because of obesity and whatever. So these people have an increasingly poor immune system. Then you get outbreaks of stuff every so often, as we saw with COVID, that it's difficult to cope with, and perhaps we would cope with it better if we had higher IQ, but we don't. We have decreasing IQ. And thirdly, as I say, we rather decadently thought we'd stamped these things out. And so we thought we'd stamped out smallpox, and it's back, and it's called monkeypox. And
Right.
I presume the other things are going to come back as well. Like, well, it has come back to some extent, but it can things that can be easily cured with antibiotics, like TB.
Right.
And TB was basically stamped out in the early 70s or late the 60s, and so we stopped worrying about TB. And now with the rise of immigration from the third world, TB is back. Now,
Well, there's
fortunately-
another aspect to this that is a bit unsettling, is that there is the very high percentage of people suffering from monkeypox are gay men. So that adds another level to it, because monkeypox seems to be spread. It's not exactly like an airborne virus, coronavirus was, but it seems to be spread through intimate contact. And I guess there's nothing more intimate than anal sex, as they say. That really sounded terrible. But it is a very high percentage of gay men. So, I mean, I think it kind of evokes the AIDS virus.
Presumably started with a particular homosexual man who somehow managed to pick up monkeypox in Africa or something like that.
Right.
And then who was Western, and then who was Canadian, from what I can work out.
Yeah.
And then that person spread monkeypox to people with whom they're intimate, and they have people with whom they're intimate, and so on. And so it becomes unless a bisexual becomes involved and spreads it to straight people. Then I'm trying to find what the percentage is. It doesn't seem to say, but it does say there's a lot, about 10%. It's fatal for 10% of its victims. But I can't find about what percent of these cases are gay.
It's down in the articles. I read a number of mainstream articles on it, and it's usually buried a little bit with just it just seems the fact that they're saying it makes me suspect that there's more to it. It's men who have sex with men who are the primary recipient of this. So it's a serious thing. But yeah, I mean, I think you could also, I mean, again, I don't think we should overreact to this, but there might also be an issue. I mean, one of the things that came out of the anti-vax campaign in 2021 was that more people began to adopt the total anti-vaccination. So a lot of times you would hear from people, well, I'm worried about this experimental vaccine and so on. Fair enough, I guess, but they would take that to becoming totally anti-vax in general. That the anti-vax virus spread to points that it was, again, it being anti-vax during my childhood or even 10 years ago
it's
was
getting interesting.
extremely
It's getting
marginal.
interesting. It's getting interesting. Right. Okay. Okay. I've got some data. So it's 70% of the British cases are gay. And some years ago, I was on holiday in the Canary Islands. I forget the name of the town, Las Palamas or something. The town was called, and that I didn't. We were walking around, my wife and the kids, and we thought, God, those people that look rather gay, and those people look a bit gay, and this is very gay looking, and there's lots of sort of chic stuff for sale, the kind that gays like. And then it turned out that Las Palamas is the kind of gay capital of Europe, and they have a massive gay festival there every year. It's
and
very
just
gay.
so happened to be there right in the middle of the gay festival.
No, it
by
wasn't.
coincidence,
I'm
happening.
Sure. It wasn't while it was happening. We were there in the October or something, and the gay festival. The gay festival happens in May. And anyway, so it makes sense why the numbers are so high in Portugal and Spain, because the Canary Islands, they've recently had this massive gay festival where 80,000 gays get together, and it's being suggested that this is what has led to the monkeypox thing spreading. So you get one gay that has monkeypox. He goes to this gay festival, and it's spread among other gays. This is being reported in India. So that could be what's going on. Oh, that's okay. That's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense of the data, why it's so high in Spain and Portugal.
Right.
Okay, we've got it.
Yikes.
So we're back to the 80s, not just in terms of the risk of nuclear war,
yes,
but in terms of a gay plague. This is nostalgia. It's like childhood has come back.
Yes.
Okay.
It does. That's how history works in some weird way. But first is tragedy, second is farce. But I don't, I'm not even sure that holds here. I think a lot of things are returning. We had a kind of 30-year respite from the Cold War, and we're back, very similar to the World War situation. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. It's interesting. But I guess the point I was making was that the smallpox, we might very well, I don't want to overreact, but we might very well need mass vaccinations for smallpox or monkeypox. And we're going to be back in the polarized world of you can't make me get a vaccine, and vaccines are the devil's semen, and et cetera. It's just, I know it's going to happen.
Oh yeah, sure. It would be. We know you can't argue that the smallpox vaccine is not a tried and tested vaccine, and it's some novel vaccine or whatever. The smallpox vaccine eradicated smallpox, but all but eradicated smallpox.
I had it, and I turned out great.
It's a terrible condition. I know when I was a kid, there was an off license near where we lived, and the guy that ran it, I don't know, he was about 60, and he was an Indian chap, and he had this terrible pockmarked face. Yeah, and he'd had smallpox as a child, presumably, and that is and scarred him for life. And so it's not very nice, even putting aside the other symptoms. So yeah, and you'll have this idea with trust breaking down, and with the correlates of low trust that some of our viewers don't like me talking about and get upset if I talk about them, but they are very real, and you'll see them in my book, Spiteful Mutants. Will result in lots of people refusing to take a smallpox vaccine and refusing to have their children given the smallpox vaccine, and then people will die. But I don't know, maybe that's the way it has to be. But if it carries on like this, and if it goes outside of the homosexual community to any significant degree, then we have an illness with a 10% mortality rate, which younger people in particular will be susceptible to. Older people will be fine. And in that sense, it'll be a little bit like the Spanish flu outbreak in the 19, where older people had some
well, they might have had some immunity due to the Russian flu, which kind of swept through.
Yeah, they had some remnant immunity.
Might have given them some immunity, but there was just a clear. It was the reverse of the coronavirus. Which, if there was a silver lining, I hate to even call it a silver lining, but young people just were not dying. It was old and the obese and people with comorbid. But yes, that was the reverse of the Spanish flu, and it might be a reverse of something like this, but I don't want to overestimate. or overreact to things. Okay. So do you want to talk about, this is kind of a light version today, but do you want to talk about, you need to go somewhere? Okay. Let me read a super chat. Okay. Yehuda Finkelstein, this is for me, so it makes sense. Richard, with the purchases of Russian gas and weapons, have you added India to the Traders Coalition? Yeah. Yeah, I have. Yehuda Finkelstein, are you? Yeah, I'll call your bluff on that one. Yeah. So basically there is a kind of third world, first world alignment to a degree. I don't think I would overestimate this like coming embrace between Russia and China, and Russia is going to be part of the new world order of the future. I would add some skepticism to that, but yeah, I think we saw this with the UN vote condemning the invasion of Ukraine. There is an interesting kind of first world and second or third world divide. Okay, has Ed been able to whet his appetite for disgusting Indian cuisine like curry, or has Ed been forced to seek alternative and better tasting food with India assisting Russia? So this is Yehuda Finkelstein is just trolling at this point.
But look, Indian food. I'm not having that. Indian food is my favorite kind of food. I eat it every day if I could, but I can't because my family insists on eating other things. So Monday I do a curry, and then on all other days I have to do other things. But it's fantastic, and Nepalese food is I'm particularly a fan of Nepalese food. Although I unfortunately I can't be bothered to learn the names of them, so I just ordered by number. But it's very, very good Indian food. And it has been a problem actually recently. You know, I couldn't get hold of any basmati rice, only jasmine rice. And I did a poll on Twitter and I asked which is better, basmati rice or jasmine rice, and 2/3 agreed it was basmati rice. It's clearly better. Jasmine rice is horrible, sticky, sweet stuff. So yeah, I need to have the old curry, I'm afraid.
I'm not the biggest fan of Indian food, but to each his own. We won't discuss matters.
Do you like Chinese food?
Well, I do, and I would say this. I like the American Chinese food, because there is an almost other genre of Americanized Chinese food. Like P.F. Chang's is not. It's almost more American than it is Chinese at this point. But yes, I do like that. I've had authentic Chinese food occasionally. I remember even when I was young, and I went with my family to someone who was, I think they were visiting and studying in Dallas and in ophthalmology, and we went to a real traditional dim sum. So we were the only white faces in a massive restaurant of 100 people or something. That was a bit much, but there were some aspects of it that were good. Some things I hate to say my Western palate just couldn't take. But yes, I do like that, and I certainly like Japanese cuisine, and yeah,
quite like Korean food.
Oh, that could be great.
I'll give Korean food a go, but I'm not so much on. I've never really been a particular fan of Chinese. It's just not. No. Anyway, look, this is really what are we talking about here? Yes, we're going to talk about something topical.
We're live streaming at this point. Yeah, we'll have to come up with a more defined, like, big topic. I thought we were getting good in 2021. We would do like a big topic about collapse. All right, let me throw us into serious intellectual activity here. So I want to talk a little bit about abortion and demographic decline, because I wonder if these things aren't connected on some kind of psychic level. So obviously I recognize the fact that the Christian pro-life movement claims that this is a purely moral case. That is, it is something that they would believe in regardless of the facts or the state of the world or what have you. It is about the human right of a child. That being said, and it's been going on for some time. It's been going. The pro-life movement emerged after Roe v. Wade decision, actually, in the 70s, and came into its own in the 80s, and has been powerful ever since. There was an interesting line in it was actually a footnote that was mentioned in the draft decision of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And I will just read this line. So let me get it real quick here. It's been referred to as domestic supply of infants, but that's a bit wrong. So let me find it real quick. Alito's draft opinion in effect states the U.S. Constitution doesn't include the right to abortion. Okay. He did. Gosh. Because this is the line. This was included in a footnote. Basically, in a footnote, Alito alluded to a CDC report about adoption. And he said, because of the decrease in the domestic supply of infants and children available for adoption, more affluent women and couples have increasingly sought to adopt children from other countries, the report said. So this was a matter in the draft of the overturning of Roe v. Wade of how do you handle a situation of a country without abortion, at the very least, state abortion. And Amy Coney Barrett mentioned the so-called safe haven laws. And those are laws that allow a mother to effectively abandon a child without legal consequences. So a mother can drop off a child at a fire station or a similar government facility. And while she gives over this child, she is not going to be affected by abandonment laws. So you obviously, there are horrible stories of mothers leaving children in dumpsters or so on. But this is a lot like leaving a child on the footsteps of the chapel. It's a way of offering it sanctuary. So what basically, and keep this in mind as well. Amy Coney Barrett has a very large family. She is a devout Catholic, and that family includes 2 adopted children from Haiti. And there's actually it's a bit sus, as they say. There's some suspicion of unfair, almost quasi-kidnapping activities involved with a lot of these people who go out of their way to adopt children from the third world, particularly Haiti, where things are not under control. And in Russia, there was actually a halt on adoptions by the United States by Putin a number of years ago. I can go check on that to see if it's still going. But what I'm suggesting here is that despite the fact that the pro-life cause, they talk about their cause being purely moral, it might have a kind of psychological connection to declining birth rates. And this is just, let me see here. This is actually just what you're seeing on your screen right now, this graph, is the birth rates. So this is births per 1,000 women aged 15 to 44. That is their fertile years. It was chugging right along, seemed to decline. There was a steep decline in the 90s. It was then going up, back up to its peak, or at least close to it, during the Bush years. Then it's gone into very steep decline since the Great Recession. That is the 2008 stock market collapse and so on. The other interesting thing about this is that, and it is going down to very dangerous proportions. The other interesting thing about this is that immigration rates are at most flatlining and basically declining. So immigration since about 1990 has been roughly 1 million people a year. That has been flatlining. So keep in mind the general population has certainly grown since then. It's grown to about 330 million people in the United States. But that too is immigration rates remain the same. So they become a smaller and smaller percentage of the population. After COVID, and all of the ramifications of COVID, immigration rates declined pretty significantly. And it's difficult to see what exactly that was, but its decline is noticeable. So we seem to be in a kind of general population decline. And I'm wondering if, why did this happen now? Well, that is the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Well, the simple explanation is that it's happened because Trump was able to appoint 3 pro-life justices to the Supreme Court. That's a, indispensable cause of this. But might there be a kind of deeper psychic connection where the pro-life movement recognizing a general decline in the population and sees outlawing abortion, maybe outlawing abortion on the federal level, maybe even outlawing contraception. Remember, this is not just some shrill liberal talking point.
I wouldn't say. I think it's more likely that it's just what we're seeing is a rise in religiousness because of various factors we've discussed before on this show. And because it is, if you control for intelligence, if you look at just the top quartile of the most intelligent, then the very, very big predictor of fertility among the most intelligent is conservatism and religiousness. And those people have certain dogmas, such as that life is sacred, and certain religious ideas. And so therefore they will become more prominent if they become more prominent among the higher classes that can then shift things in their direction. And I think that's what is more what's going on, rather than that they have somehow recognized that, the population is going down. I think that people like that have always been opposed to abortion and contraception to some extent, but for religious reasons. And it's just that those people are now in a position of power, which they previously weren't. And I suspect that the reason for that is, as I say, that the big sterilizing factor among the high IQ quadrant is liberalism. That's the big sterilizer. You could always cite examples of liberals that have lots of kids, but that's what the GSSS data is telling us. And so you would expect them, if they get into a position of power, to then eventually start shifting the culture or aspects of the culture their way. And I think that's more likely what it is, because if they were genuinely concerned about their own race, then they would find some fudge to ensure that abortion continued among, let's say, black people.
But they're not. Christians have never been concerned about their own race. I mean, they're
not going to be concerned about. They're not going to be concerned about the demographics of humanity. There's no problem there. There's no the world.
Yeah, but they do if they do draw a line at some point. Hey guys. All right. Hi guys. Good. All right, guys. I will be done real soon. You got to go upstairs, okay? Just petting Zeus, okay? All right. It happens. It's a casual stream. Okay. You can see on this graph, I'll just read it out to you. So church membership as late as the year 2000, when George Bush was elected, was 70%. It is now below 50%. So, I mean, you can make it that there's a kind of polarization or intensification among churchgoers. But keep in mind the percentage of I can find this statistic for you, but you can take my word for it for now. The percentage of unchurched people, let's call them that is atheists, agnostics, and so on, is at the same level of the percentage of evangelical Christians during the Bush administration.
But you have to see the difference between trailer park trash going to church and stopping going to church, and intelligent people. Those are two different things. So what I would,
You think intelligent people are becoming more religious? I mean,
well, that's evident. We've got data on it. It's so
intelligent people are becoming more religious.
That if you look at the data, then and you control for intelligence, then the factor that predicts breeding is religiousness and conservatism. So that means that among the intelligent quadrant, people are becoming more conservative and more religious. And America is simply going through a delayed version of the secularization that we went through in Europe 50 years ago. And for various reasons, or 60 years ago, but for various reasons, it's been a lot slower and a lot longer coming that you've got to this point. I mean, 20 or 30 years ago, 50% of Americans went to church.
Right.
And we were at that
Every
kind
Sunday,
of level.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and we were on Sunday. And we were at that kind of level in England in about 1880.
Right.
So it's taken a long time. And now in England, the number of people that go to church every Sunday is something like 4%. Northern Ireland,
that would imply that we would see greater religion in Europe. If you're claiming that there's this delay, then where is the greater religiosity in Europe?
Well, it's evident in there is a growing in Europe the church that exists that is becoming more conservative and extreme, and the state church, the Church of England, the liberal wishy-washy thing, that's just collapsing, and people that are religious, that are really religious, are moving away into their own sort of separate little churches.
Well, but that would happen, I think, with anything. I mean, in the sense that if any kind of large movement is declining, then the people who remain are almost by definition the hardcore types. So, I mean, I don't think that's terribly surprising. Look, I don't deny the basic facts that the statistic is something like this. An evangelical Christian mother, that is a low church Protestant mother, will have 2.5 children for every one child that a upper level Episcopalian woman has, or an atheist has, or something like that. I don't deny that, but what I'm saying is that it's I don't know, to think that the religion is just carried in the genes of these children. I mean, there is just so much evidence of evangelical Christianity declining. I mean, they say it themselves. And Christianity is exploding. Protestant Christianity is exploding in the third world. And you even have Hispanic. Another interesting trend is Hispanics who have they're coming from Mexico or South America. They have a Catholic background or adopting evangelical Protestantism.
Well, it's Brazil. It's Brazil. It's massive evangelical Protestantism. It's massive, and it is having an influence on the government. And Bolsonaro was elected to a significant degree on the back of the rise of evangelical Protestantism in Brazil. So that's more of a case in point. But all I'm saying is that in the data, we've got clear evidence of the direction of breeding, and the heritability of these religiousness is quite high, and the degree to which people stay in it is quite high. And so that one would predict eventually a cultural shift among the higher classes. I'm only saying that this abortion thing would be consistent if that with something like that possibly going on. I don't know if they care about.
Well, go ahead. Finish your point.
No, I don't know if they. I don't see that they particularly. I think these people are just They're dogmatists. They have certain dogmas that they strongly and irrationally believe and are not open to question. And one of those is that life begins at conception, and that all lives are somehow of equal value, and all of this kind of woolly thinking, and they just impose that on that's what they're going to take action on. And they don't seem to understand the subtleties of this. For example, I did that article on on abortion. There was a study which indicated that the modelling, the crime rate in the US fell 20% between 1997 and 2014, and it was calculated that it was due basically the cumulative impact of legalized abortion on crime is roughly 45%, accounting for a very substantial portion of the roughly 50 to 55% overall decline from the peak of crime in the early 1990s. So they modeled it and they calculated that abortion reduces crime. And so
this is the Freakonomics thing. This was actually a public controversy about 20 years ago with the book Freakonomics. They actually, Levitt and someone else revisited this issue. There's a paper out like last year that I found online. But yes, go ahead.
Abortion reduces crime. And so if you really, if you care about people and you want people to have a pleasant life and you don't want people to get murdered and robbed and raped, then there is an extent to which you should probably be in favor of this, because the idea that all babies are equal is nonsense. The ones that are aborted by people who have low IQ, who are thus more likely to commit crime and perpetuate the genes for committing crime, and who have psychopathic traits, who are more likely to commit crime and perpetuate the genes for committing crime. So it seems to me to be perfectly logical that you should not interfere with this system. It's not the kind evangelical lovely people that are aborting their children, you know. It's generally rather unpleasant people who will produce rather unpleasant people. But that debate is lost on the liberal, because they believe that everyone's somehow everything's to do with environment and there's no genetics involved, even though they're in favor of abortion. And then the conservative, who will accept genetics and those differences, except when it comes to little babies. They're somehow inherently innocent and beautiful and have to be given a chance.
I guess let me just go back to this hobby horse, because it is a disagreement. I mean, I do think that Christianity will continue to decline, and on a secular basis, so to speak. Now, to support your point, one thing that is interesting is the fact that these Supreme Court justices who were integral in overturning Roe v. Wade are Catholic. Now, Gorsuch, his religious affiliation is a little bit ambiguous. He was actually a Protestant in youth, if I'm correct, but it's certainly not the kind of Antonin Scalia type Catholic. Amy Coney Barrett is obviously Catholic. She's actually from Notre Dame. Ditto Alito, ditto the Clarence Thomas, ditto the rest of them. There is something that I don't know if this also takes place in Britain as well, but there is this strong trend of Catholic conversion in the conservative movement. So becoming a conservative, bigwig, working in the movement, working at a think tank, maybe becoming a Supreme Court justice, etc., converting to Catholicism seems to be a kind of rite of passage. And that is interesting. You have people who, like Newt Gingrich, converting to Catholicism, people who you would associate with the religious right, like Rick Santorum converting to Catholicism. Mike Pence is maybe a outlier in the sense that he was actually a Irish Catholic who converted to evangelical Christianity. But the trend, there is a very strong trend, not necessarily in the voting base, but in the upper echelons of the conservative movement. You can even see this in the development of the religious right. Paul Weyrich, he might have actually been Orthodox, but I believe he was Catholic. And other people came in to a Protestant voting bloc and brought in a Catholic cause. So evangelical Christianity had liberalized in the 60s and 70s. The Roe v. Wade was endorsed by the Southern Baptist Convention, and the Catholics came in and said, how are we going to organize this post-segregationist voting bloc? So we need to find a cause, and the cause was the pro-life cause. So Jerry Falwell adopted that. He was a Protestant, obviously, but he adopted basically a Catholic talking point and moved it towards that was the basis of his career. So I don't doubt a couple of things. I don't doubt that there's going to be a kind of intense and maybe more hardcore or even extreme version of religion among the higher elites. That is, if you are a a open Christian, you are going to more likely be conservative, because there aren't any more wishy-washies. The social impulse or peer pressure to basically say that you're a Christian is leaving us day by day. You don't have to say that. Joe Biden does say "God bless our troops" at the end of speeches, but Joe Biden is
as you say, you do among the right, and you increasingly do among the right. And I always get these people that will say, "Ed, are you a Christian? Ed, do you believe in God?" Ed, what they're basically asking is, "Ed, do you share my dogmas? I have certain dogmas.
Are you on the
I
team?
Want to know, are you on my team?"
Yeah.
That's the question, because that's important to me. I can't have anything to do with anybody that's not completely on my team, because I see the world in a black and white way, and I live in a war. Yeah. And that's the mentality of these people. And no, the answer is I'm not on your team. No, I'm on the team of wanting to know the truth about things. I'm on that team. That's the team I'm on, and that's not your team, because you want to know the truth about things, but not that thing, and not that thing. And that's just as bad as the woke. They want to know the truth about all kinds of things, but no, not that thing, and not that thing, and not that thing.
Right.
So no, I'm not on your team. But there is evidence in the data of the beginning of a process among the Generation Z of people being more conservative on certain markers. I've got a book coming out on this in July. But we're not seeing it yet. But there could be something like that stirring. It's certainly stirring in the data. But I just don't see how the idea that they care about maintaining a high population. I find it hard to get my head around, because that's not imperative in itself. Are we saying that they identify with humanity as a whole? Because you wouldn't.
I'm saying that on an unconscious level. And so granted, now you could argue that because he's talking about the unconscious, that, he doesn't need to actually prove something. He could just say it's unconscious. Okay. But I'm suggesting that on an unconscious level, there is a recognition of demographic decline. And demographic decline is, of course, very real. And that this is a way for them to handle that issue. This is their solution, which is forcing women to carry babies to term and engaging in some kind of adoption, which is something that they've also been supporting for a long time. So I'm saying it's a kind of psychological tug on them that I think they're loath to put into writing. They're loath to make explicit and basically just outright say, the birth rate's declining. We got to get busy, ladies. They're not going to say that, but it's there. It's underpinning this.
Well, what you could argue is you could just put it in terms of my book, which is Feminism and the Fall of the West. Abortion is allowing women to have control over their own bodies. It's allowing women to have agency, and that is against patriarchy, and that is therefore against group selection. Basically, that is bad for a united society. That's a society where men are of intermale conflict. That's a society of chaos. And so the argument you can see is ban abortion and reduce the level of chaos. But the counterpoint to that is you get kind of more chaos, because then you get people who are just mad and bad having lots of kids, and that creates further chaos. And so maybe in 1990 America was more patriarchal and more traditional and whatever than it is now, but it also had a higher crime rate. And according to this data that I cited, you walking the streets in New York in 1990 was quite a dangerous thing to do, and now not so much. So it's these things that have to be kept in balance. That's why I'm kind of ambivalent about it. I can see the arguments. There was someone that wrote on my channel on a comment, and he wrote, "Oh, well, of course I'm in favour of aborting dysgenic babies, but I just don't like the idea of giving women agency over their own bodies."
Yeah. That sounds like an internet patriarchist. Yes. One of these guys. Yeah. Hold on. You can play.
You promised them. You promised them exactly that they've got watches, and they've
they're at it. It is right an hour right now.
Exactly an hour, and they have very good. They have an internal body clock in the same way that cats do, and they know an hour. They know the time.
Have you ever woken up, like you wake yourself up like at 6 a.m. when you have a flight? It's kind of weird. Even if you're
absolutely.
It's a funny thing.
It's the thing that we somehow managed to do.
It's like an untapped part of our brain that we don't really use, but it's actually there and might have been very necessary in some, aspects of our life history.
Yeah, gentlemen to bed, for we arise at daybreak, make our way to the battle,
Right.
and that sort of thing. I think so. So I think
Okay, I'll ask one quick. Oh, Hervar. He was suggesting he read something on monkeypox about men having sex with men. Is this the new gay? What happened to homosexuals? And he used some other words. Is the Newspeak dictionary removing gay and homosexual? I don't know. I noticed that as well. I mean, I think you could get away with saying that this is the most objective way of putting it, because it's not necessarily an identity. It's just you're a physician. You're saying they have sexual intercourse with men. So we're not even commenting on their identity. But I don't know if it's just that or if it's some kind of new woke newspeak. Who knows? They don't want to stigmatize gay men by saying gay men. They want to, I don't know. Maybe. Who knows?
They want to stigmatize sodomites specifically.
Right. Including the heterosexual ones.
Including heterosexual sodomites.
Yeah. All right. So what do you want to talk about next week? I think maybe let's do a big topic. I've been kind of circling around the evolution of consciousness.
All right. It sounds a bit gay,
possible.
but I'll give it a. It sounds a bit humanities, but I'll give it a think, and we'll talk about that. Okay.
It's not humanities. It's very real. Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that, or we'll do something else, or perhaps some crazy event will occur between that.
Almost certainly.
Okay. Everyone, thanks for joining us. This has been fun. And thanks especially for Super Chatters, and we will return next week. All right. Thanks, Ed. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
All right.